There are no antagonists in Haikyuu. It's a phrase you hear quite often when it comes to Haikyuu, and honestly, it's remarkable for a story to receive such a compliment. Writing your characters in a way where each of them is relatable in their own right, whether it be the opponents or the main characters, is not an easy task. On top of it all, to be able to make the viewers feel for the opponents, the so-called antagonists, is even harder. Every single opponent the Karasuno team has faced has become a friend or an ally at some point in the story. After all, none of them are doing anything wrong or evil. They're all just playing volleyball, so be it for different reasons depending on the person, but they're all in it to win. Every single one of these players wants to stay on the court as long as possible. And that universal hunger, that competition that gives birth to intense rivalries, is a huge part of every single character's growth. Each loss, each experience, each training arc, each opponent, gives everyone on the court something to learn from. However, despite all of this, despite everything I just said, there is one antagonist, only one, in all of Haikyuu. An antagonist that every character has to face at one point or another, and one that none of them could avoid. That antagonist is themselves. You are your greatest enemy, and overcoming those hurdles the human mind creates is not easy. Yet it's what we must overcome in order to evolve, to improve, to learn, to become a better person. Whether it be Kageyama Tobio learning to believe in his teammates, or Satori Tendo coming to embrace his weird self, or Kozume Kenma taking that extra step. There's so many journeys to behold, so many journeys to learn from. Today, I want to talk about one such journey. The journey of a man whose biggest enemy is none other than himself. The man who, I would say, is the most flawed player in Haikyuu, making him one of the most relatable characters I've ever come across. The character who is dubbed by many as the greatest antagonist in sports anime. Of course, I'm talking about the Great King himself and my favorite setter in Haikyuu, Oikawa, Toru. Oikawa is, as we all know, one of the best written characters in Haikyuu, and one that's really inspiring, especially to me, who understands his mindset on a personal level. He's the perfect example of what I can only describe as a character that makes you take a step back and reevaluate all your previous assumptions about him. His growth is absolutely phenomenal, particularly between Season 1 and 2. The more I rewatched Haikyuu, I realized that, to me, Oikawa from Season 1 is a completely different player than the one in Season 2. And what makes Oikawa in the second game different from the first is his mindset. That Oikawa from Season 1, although reigned victorious against Karasuno, had in truth been defeated mentally. That Oikawa had lost the game from the moment it began, regardless of the result. So let's start at the very beginning and come to understand this flawed yet beautiful journey. When we are first introduced to Oikawa as well as his team, they're essentially there to be the perfect foil to Karasuno. They're rivals, they're opposites. At the beginning, Oikawa is someone that seems absolutely perfect on the surface, with his popularity, that all-knowing smile, his influence on the court, his setting ability, and most importantly, his tendency to bring out the best from every single one of his teammates. Oikawa has an almost masterful understanding of people, perhaps due to fantastic observation skills and a deeper level of game sense. It was a skill that was the exact opposite of what Kageyama was doing, which was making other people match his pace. And with that, we begin to see all the seeds that were planted to oh so clearly set up Seijo and Oikawa as the ultimate antagonists. Yet, as we watch this first game between the two rivals unfold, it seems that there is more to this setter than meets the eye. He's not just a charismatic guy that thinks he's the shit. Oikawa actually puts in a lot of work and practices day in and day out. The guy has earned his place on his team, and he's without a shadow of a doubt Seijo's backbone. However, the more the game progresses, we get to see the cracks appear. The chinks in the armor of the seemingly invincible setter. His quick looks he gives Kageyama, a hint of jealousy brewing within. His nervous smile that welcomes a challenge, but also fears what lies beyond. And finally, his defeated mindset that accepts its fate. This great king is no monster. He is no prodigy. Oikawa Toru is not a genius. Rather, he's quite the opposite. Through a series of flashbacks, we are shown that Oikawa wasn't always this ever-smiling, cool captain. Rather, he was on edge a lot of the times during his middle school years, where he felt like he was constantly being surpassed by those more naturally gifted than him. Even though he put in just as much work, just as many hours, and just as much dedication as players like Ushiwaka, Oikawa could never catch up. To make matters worse, there was now another setter on his team, a young boy with more potential and talent than one could imagine. A young boy named Kageyama Tobio. So, on one hand, Oikawa was unable to catch up to Ushiwaka, and on the other, Kageyama was rapidly catching up to him. Frustrated and desperate to prove his worth, Oikawa began overworking himself to the point where it started rubbing off on his game. He made a lot of mistakes during practices and matches, and oftentimes had to be subbed out so he could cool off. Then he proceeded to take out that frustration in the form of treating Kageyama poorly, and practicing till he couldn't anymore. Before he knew it, Oikawa stopped having fun. Instead, he was fueled by a sort of hatred or envy of this idea of geniuses. He despised the fact that he could be surpassed even though he worked much harder, and unknowingly or knowingly, he accepted this fact. Oikawa stopped believing in himself. However, thanks to Iwaizumi, he comes to understand his mistakes and realizes that he's not alone. After all, that's what a team is for. Suddenly, Oikawa gained a new aura, this calm, calculating presence that completely changed him. And soon enough, in his third year of middle school, Oikawa won the Best Setter award. However, that inferiority complex towards Kageyama and Ushiwaka still remained. It's not something you can forget easily, and Oikawa certainly didn't for years to come. Oikawa, as the game against Karasuno progresses, realizes how much Kageyama has grown since then. Kageyama's setting tendencies are still under progress, but the fact was that Kageyama was learning what it means to be a part of a team, something he didn't understand for a long time. And because of this, Oikawa can sense the skill gap between them closing, more than ever before. Like I said, Oikawa welcomes the challenge, but fears what lies beyond. He knows that he is better today. He knows that he will win today. But what about tomorrow? Tomorrow he has to play Ushiwaka, someone he's never defeated before, not with a team and not as an individual. What about the day after? Next year? Oikawa believes that Kageyama will surpass him at some point or another. More than believing, he accepts it, and in doing so limits his own growth. To become a better player, you not only need to have a strong physical connection with the sport you play, but also a mental connection. You need to be mentally strong, and in this first match against Karasuno, Oikawa is weak. Not because he acknowledges Kageyama to be better, but because he accepts it. He's afraid of what's to come. Towards the end of this first game, that's exactly what Iwaizumi has to remind Oikawa of. He tells Oikawa straight up that someone who can't see the opponent in front of him can't defeat the opponent that lies beyond. This lifts Oikawa's spirits, but it's not enough. Oikawa doesn't give himself enough credit, is dreading what lies beyond, and as a result, sabotages his own growth. As the match comes to an end with Seijo taking the win, Oikawa says a line that perfectly encapsulates this defeated mindset.
トビオ、急速に進化するお前に、俺は負けるのかもしれないね。でも、それは今日じゃない。
To me, Oikawa saying you might beat me someday, but that won't be today, wasn't a declaration of victory. It was admitting his weakness. And honestly, he really needed that. Him actually speaking these thoughts into existence as he wins the game was probably a wake-up call. That look on his face says it all. This was no victory. And after this, Seijo yet again fails to overcome Shiratorizawa, and once more, Oikawa has to face failure at the hands of Ushiwaka. And this is what I think was the breaking point for the Great King. This was when he probably took a step back and kind of just reflected. What the hell was holding him back? Why did he face the same obstacles over and over? He had faced both Ushiwaka and Kageyama in middle school, and he probably thought he was beyond that, but here he was, back where he started. 3 whole years after he swore vengeance against Shiratorizawa, he still hadn't beat them, and now he only had one more chance. One more tournament until he graduated high school. After that, he won't have any more chances to prove his worth. Right? Obviously, if he wants to challenge Ushiwaka after high school, it's going to have to be at a much bigger stage. A stage he believes that he doesn't belong in. A stage Oikawa believes he'll never be good enough to be a part of. And it's at this point, after all these years, that he probably realized. He realizes that he wants to keep playing volleyball. Not just keep playing, but keep improving, growing, and competing at the highest level. And there's only one thing he has to do in order to achieve that goal. Believe that he can achieve it. An important lesson from his past, Oikawa's greatest lesson, finally seems to click with him, and he realizes what was holding him back this whole time. Himself. The lesson that transcended the screen and made Oikawa Toru my favorite setter in Haikyuu. And so we arrive at the rematch. Karasuno versus Aoba Josai, Kageyama versus Oikawa. At this point, Karasuno is a whole different team, and so is their setter. They take the first set, while Seijo takes the second. And so it's all up to the third and final set. However, here we see Kageyama pull off a shocking move, one that leaves Seijo and Oikawa biting the dust. At the very end of the game, Kageyama made a risky play that no one would have the balls to actually do, putting Karasuno at game point. This is a Kageyama that is an inch from surpassing Oikawa, an evolved, dangerous Kageyama. However, the same could be said about Oikawa. This isn't the defeated king from before.
知ってるよけど俺は負けない
I will not lose. He didn't say, I will not lose for now. He simply said, I will not lose. Ever. Like I said, this is a different Oikawa, and it's now that we get to see the lesson that opened his eyes. As said by Oikawa's mysterious mentor, the easier path to take would be to accept that this is your limit. This is as far as you can go and that others more talented will simply surpass you. However, the harder path, the more treacherous path, would be to simply have the mindset that this is not the end of the road. It's a section of the road you're stuck on, but one that you can definitely move past and over time catch up to those geniuses. It'll take a lot of belief and a hell of a lot of hard work. More work than you've ever done before. But god damn, will it be worth every penny. All you have to do is believe in yourself. And in the second game, that's exactly the mindset with which Oikawa is entering the court. He is no longer filled with envy, rather a burning passion to win, no matter the cost. This is not the man who admitted defeat. This is not the man who overworked himself to death. This is not the man who gave up. This Oikawa believes in himself.
才能の開花のチャンスをつかむのは今日かもしれないもしくは明日か明後日か来年か30歳になってからかも体格ばかりは何とも言えないけどないと思ってたら多分一生ないんだやっぱ及川さん最近なんか変わったよ
As pointed out by his teammates, Oikawa has changed. Instead of standing still and giving up on the sport he loves, Oikawa decided that this isn't the end of his journey. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, or even by the time he's 30. But at some point, he will grasp his chance. He will evolve and he will become the best version of himself. And he's willing to do whatever it takes to get there. As the fight for the final point rages on, both teams giving it their all, Seijo messes up a receive, and the ball veers too far to the right for the setter to comfortably use. If Seijo don't get this point, they will lose. However, without batting an eye, without missing a beat, Oikawa chases the ball and makes a play that leaves everyone speechless. A scene that perfectly embodies Oikawa's current mindset, his determination, and the freshly lit fire burning in his chest. A play that perfectly embodies this beautiful journey. A super long set with almost perfect precision. However, to me, that wasn't even the highlight of this scene. The best part of this play is what happens right after the set. I just love this scene because of how raw it is. He crashes onto the table, he immediately gets up, slips on the cloth while getting up, but still keeps going. This whole sequence perfectly embodies his entire journey. He keeps crashing, he keeps falling, and he keeps facing obstacles, but Oikawa always gets back up. especially now, when he finally believes in himself. He wants this point more than anyone else. Unfortunately, that day was not today. Karasuno just barely manages to squeak past a point, and Seijo lose the game. However, to me, it was Oikawa that came out on top. With this one play, the Great King faced his past and finally broke free of his limits. And even though Seijo ended up losing the game, even though this was his last high school tournament, this time, Oikawa Toru had not been defeated. In fact, this was just the beginning. Thank you for watching this video, and first of all, thank you all so much for 10,000 subscribers. I can't believe we hit this milestone, and it's honestly so surreal. I really just haven't had a moment to actually take it in, and when I do, I know it's wow. This video was the most requested on my channel for a long time. Every video I made, there was an Oikawa comment. So here we are. I decided to finally make it. There will be a manga video, or a manga version of Oikawa that I want to talk about. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for 10,000 subscribers. I guess I'll see you on the next one.